we got a show for you today. Mashallah, we have in the studio, we've got a guest in the studio and someone calling in as well. We have lovely Rebecca Lord from Reed Foundation. And hi, Rebecca, you okay?
Hi, yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, and we will be also speaking to Brother Amir, who will be calling in very soon too. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. So as promised, today in the studio we have Rebecca Lord, who is from the Reed Foundation, and the Reed Foundation is an established charity. It's been going on for how many years, Rebecca, would you know?
Oh,
quite some time.
quite a while.
And just to read from about the Reed Foundation, their vision is, together we can end poverty through education. And the mission statement states that Reed Foundation uses education as a powerful tool to narrow the gap between advantaged and disadvantaged communities. We strive to make a difference where it is needed the most. We envision a fair world where each precious child has access to their basic needs. And that's pretty amazing. So we are talking to Rebecca, and she is a programs officer. So welcome to the studio, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and so what I wanted to ask you was, how did you get involved with the Reed Foundation?
So I've been working in charity since I graduated from university about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. One of my friends actually recommended Reed Foundation to me when a job opening came up, so I had a little research and saw all the good work that they were doing and applied and managed to get a job here, so it's been really exciting ever since.
That's amazing. So what attracted you in particular to this charity?
A few things. When I was looking into them, I obviously noticed it's an education-focused charity, which is something that initially really interested me. I think it's quite admirable and very effective in the field to choose one area and just focus on that and specialise in it.
Yeah.
And also once I did the interview, I noticed it's like a relatively small team that's growing, which is quite exciting to be a part of and get started with. So yeah, it's growing quite organically, and the projects reflect that as well, which is really nice.
So what has been your progress through the charity? Did you just start as a programs manager?
No. I actually started as an intern in my first job, so I did that for about 4 months, just sort of 3 days a week helping around the programs department at a different charity, just like learning things as I went, and then managed to get 2 promotions in that same place. So
amazing.
Assistant to officer, and then that's when I made the transition to Reed as the program partnerships officer here.
That's fantastic. So the vision for Reed Foundation is to end poverty through education. So I wanted to ask you, how is this achieved? What difference does education make in the life of underprivileged children?
Well, it's a big topic to talk about just now. Reed's working in a number of countries, and in each area it's very key that we tailor the approach to the situation there. Mm-hmm. Obviously in Pakistan we have our orphan sponsorship programs, which is so established, and for these children, this is orphan children that we're sponsoring to get a quality education in Reed Foundation schools. So otherwise these children just, they wouldn't have the opportunity for any education, let alone such a quality one. Mm-hmm. And we sponsored them up to the age of 18, which really gives them a good grounding to be able to get a good job for the future, provide for their family, and just go on to more exciting things than perhaps they would have done otherwise. And as well, we have another program in Lebanon, and it's quite interesting to see how education, it's not just the education you provide that really makes an impact, but also what the act of just going to the school or going to the educational classes does for the child. It's, sometimes we're working with children that are in refugee camps, and going to the school is, the most exciting part of their day. They get to go outside and meet other students like them. and it's a safe space for them. They can have fun, express themselves, and just be a child as well, which I think is kind of just as important as what they're learning.
So what project is that in the one in Lebanon?
Oh, sorry, that's our School in a Bus program.
Oh yes, I've read about that. That's brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
So it's a mobile school.
Yeah, it's literally a bus that's been converted, and it's got little seats at the side and desks like put in there as well, and really nicely decorated so the students feel welcome. And it just goes from the selected camps. It drives up and the students come in the day. We have teachers there. Sometimes they work in the bus or just outside, and just have their classes there. And they aim to sort of integrate into formal education once they've graduated that class.
That's a brilliant idea, really good. So you are the programs officer and oversee the Empower Her campaign, which is a specific campaign. I think you're focusing at the moment on it as well.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Can you tell me about this project?
Yeah, of course. So this is our big sort of focus at the moment for fundraising. There's a great opportunity that we've got with UK Aid Match. So we submitted a grant to them, and they accepted us, which was really amazing. It was a massive process. It started in the end of 2020, so it's a long time coming. We've been working on this a long time. The programme is called Empower Her, and it's ensuring quality education for girls in the most remote parts of Pakistan. So we're working in Gilgit-Baltistan, in a district Diyama. So yeah, it's 2,250 girls that we're targeting in the most remote areas, opening 75 sort of learning centres, community-based. So it's kind of, really local to the students, something that they could definitely have, the idea is that they won't have any barriers to coming to this school. It'll be right where they live. And in doing 75, hopefully we can reach, a large area.
I mean, when you talk about remote areas, that really is remote. I mean, for people who don't know, that is like a northern area in Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've been to Pakistan a number of times, but I've never been there. And I mean, I imagine it's difficult to access. So do you go by road or how do you think? I know you haven't been there yet. Maybe I shouldn't be asking that question.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a very difficult region to get around to, and even more difficult to get to schools.
Yes.
Students might be walking, 2 hours to get to a sort of mainstream school, which is why a lot of them, and particularly girls, wouldn't do that. They wouldn't be travelling by themselves 2 hours each day. And this is one of the barriers that we're trying to sort of reduce through this project.
Yeah, so on the Reed Foundation about this project, it says that there are an estimated 23 million out-of-school children in Pakistan alone. And, the mind boggles thinking about it. 23 million is a huge amount.
Insane figure.
Sorry?
It's an insane figure.
It's insane, yeah. So what do you think are the main reasons for this, and how can these issues be addressed? So I know, again, this is a huge question, but is it just poverty?
So there's a number of things. Talking about this region that we're going to be working in particular. Obviously it is so remote. That's a massive barrier for students attending schools. One of the things in this particular region that we're working in is for girls, there's a massive disparity between girls and boys' schools. There's just literally not any girls, not enough girls' schools, and even fewer that have female teachers there as well. And this is something, a lot of families and parents just don't feel comfortable sending their children to these schools, these girls, I mean. And
is it like a safety issue? Safety or security?
Kind of a cultural thing. Yeah, and also just a lot of the families don't really see the value in having their girls go to school. Maybe it's just not something they haven't learned why it's important. And of course it is. Investing in a girl's education is going to impact their whole family. It's going to change her way of life. It's going to impact what age she gets married, what age she has children, and what she can do with her life, and the opportunities that will come from that.
Yeah, this reminds me of the saying, I probably am not going to remember word for word, that when you educate a man, you educate an individual, but when you educate a woman, you educate a community, something like that.
Yeah, no, that is very good. That's
and
exactly right.
Yes, definitely. I mean, of course, there has to be some sort of precautions and things like that. But the basic education is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, through this project, we're targeting primary education, and it's a 3-year sort of compact curriculum. You know, these students haven't maybe attended school at all, or maybe some have and they've dropped out or something. So it's a compact curriculum for 3 years to sort of accelerate their learning. You know, obviously students might go to school for like 7 years and then graduate, but these students we're going to target are between 6 and 16 years old, so it's a wide range, so to get them all up to the same speed.
So that's quite interesting.
Curriculum.
So you've got 3-year curriculum for children aged between 6 and 16.
That's right, yeah.
So how does that work? So you would what subjects do they teach anyway? So
it's, you know, basic curriculum, language, maths, science, and sort of what's the word, like recreational stuff as well.
That's really interesting. So I'm sort of imagining in my head, I don't know, you're too young to remember, there used to be this American program called Little House on the Prairie. Okay. Back in the days, and there used to be, you know, these in the old West, there used to be these little village schools, and you have children of all different ages in that school.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can imagine that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a similar concept. I mean, to kind of make the most impact the most quickly, this is kind of the approach that we think is going to work, and we've had the pilot project on this as well. So,
and what has been the community's response to this?
So before we set up the idea of the project, you know, we have obviously our headquarters in Islamabad, and then we have regional offices, including in Gilgit-Baltistan. So, you know, we have very close ties to the communities, and we kind of know the situation there, and earn their trust as well, just through operating there. So this is something that's been designed in coordination, you know, with other local authorities, maybe other organisations that are doing similar things. But a key thing throughout this project is to keep the community and the family a massive part of it. You know, if there is any reluctance of families sending their girls to school, we want to make sure that they're reassured that they're in safe hands, it's worthwhile keeping them going. So there's going to be a massive sort of awareness raising campaign as well alongside this programme, just to make sure that communities do see the value in it and continue to send their girls to school even after the project ends. So that's a massive thing that we're also going to try and achieve.
So the fundraising is mainly to build schools?
So the fundraising is for the entire project, and the project sort of has 4 main things, which is 1, establishing the centres, the 75 centres, you know, in terms of renting a premises or however we may do that in the different locations. Secondly, it's about teacher training. So we're going to obviously recruit and hire 75 female teachers, and 1 will run each centre. So there's going to be an intense training at the beginning and then throughout as well. And then thirdly, we're going to focus on the community element, which is what I just mentioned.
Yes.
Sort of establishing committees at various levels, so that, you know, the village and the government in each area, they know what's going on. And then the 4th element is the outreach and enrolment of the students.
Brilliant. And how many children would be enrolled in each school? I mean, roughly?
So it'd be around 30 in each school.
30?
Yeah.
Oh, nice and cosy.
Yeah, it's kind of just like one class in each area.
So hopefully year on year the classes will increase.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is like the first time Reed Foundation will be doing this project on such a large scale. So the whole thing will be a learning process as well. You know, after the project ends, we'll have massive evaluation and see how it works and what we can do better, and can hopefully continue the project for the future.
Assalamu alaikum, and this is Amir Naeem, who is calling on the number, mashallah, I should say OBE. Mashallah, yes, it's brilliant. How are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum. Yes, sir, I can hear you and I'm fine. Thanks very much for asking.
That's great. So you are the lead for the UK aid match for Reed Foundation. That's correct?
Correct.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, yes. So, you know, mashallah, Rebecca's been telling me all about your projects and just amazing work that Reed Foundation is doing. And I wanted to ask you about that, but firstly, just a little bit about yourself. and you've had a lot of experience in the charity sector, and you were recently awarded an OBE for your service to Muslim communities, and mashallah, that's a great honor. And so I just wanted to ask you, like, when did you get involved with charity work, and what do you think you have learned through your experiences? I know it's a big ask, but what do you think has been sort of the highlights of your work?
Yeah, sure. So, wow, I got involved with the charity sector almost 25 odd years ago, during the time of the Kosovan crisis, actually. I went out to Albania as a volunteer and helped set up a few programs, and then I suppose got the bug, and ever since that I've actually been in the sector. I'm a pharmacist, actually, by original training.
Okay.
And the charity sector took me away from that, and alhamdulillah, very, very grateful for that too. I mean, my views of the sector, I mean, as the Muslim charity sector in particular, obviously, because that's where I spend my time mostly, we're still a young sector, although we have come up on leaps and bounds in the last, I think, 10 years or so, in terms of number of charities, and then I suppose the growth within them, as well as their ability to, I suppose, understand, how to deliver well, as much as fundraise well, and then obviously then looking at building organizations and organization infrastructure, robustness and governance and those things. Reed is quite unique in the sector, actually. One of the things that attracted me to Reed Foundation was, whereas most of the Muslim charity sector, what's happened is, there's been a philanthropist, someone who's actually been charitably minded. He or she has set up the organization, fundraised, and then I suppose gone out to find partners with how to deliver the projects. Reed was very different. Reed already existed on the ground. I mean, Reed was running hundreds of schools before the UK office was ever established.
Okay, interesting.
So it quite uniquely had a track record even before anyone had heard of Reed Foundation in the UK, and to the track record in terms of delivering on the ground. And I think that makes Reed, although relatively young in the UK, about 10 odd years here in the UK, it makes it really quite mature in terms of its on the ground kind of lifespan and capacity. So that does make the organisation quite unique in the UK amongst the family of Muslim charities, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, what I find interesting is quite a lot of charities are sort of generic in their outlook, and they just raise money for a number of different sort of like a hot pot of different campaigns and things like orphan sponsorship and to fight poverty and for this and that kind of thing. But I like the way that Reed Foundation has sort of focused on education, and I really think that is the one thing that takes people excuse me it takes people out of poverty, because you can move up the social ladder, as it is with education. I asked Rebecca the same question, why is education so important?
It's I think you somewhat answered it there. Now I suppose our strap line underneath our logo, you will see it's got these two words. It just says education works.
Yes.
And it's because, I mean, it works in the way you've just described there, in that people who actually manage to get an education, they'll break the cycle of poverty. They'll not be dependent on handouts and things in the future. But one of the other things, though, the other ways it really genuinely works, is it's one of those types of charities which just constantly just keeps giving back. Once you've got an education, it's not that anyone can take it away from you. If I gave you a car, it can be stolen, it can be taken away from you.
Yeah.
If I give you a food parcel, it can be taken away from you, or it gets consumed and it's over. If I give you an education, that's it, it's yours. Nobody can take that away from you. And so it constantly gives to the people that actually receive it. It's I suppose the ultimate Sadaqah Jariyah project in terms of continuing charity. And what then happens is those people who have actually managed to attain that education, they themselves become zakat givers and sadaqah givers.
Yes.
So actually then in which case the charity's grown even more. So you might have
Yes.
given, a small sum now, but the knock-on effect, you say you throw the pebble and you let Allah take care of the ripples where the ripples go. It really, truly is sustainable input in terms of the what comes out the other end once you put it in.
Yes, in fact, I was just going to say that myself, because I assume these people, these students, once they're educated, they would want to give back to their communities as well. And so maybe you have some of them become teachers and trainers themselves.
Yeah, there's a great example of some of our kind of orphans that have gone through Reed Foundation schools who have become teachers in schools. There's great examples of some of them that have actually become doctors. And they then are giving back substantially to their communities, because they started life as orphans. They know what it means to be in need. So
Yes.
even though they become doctors who serve the community, as opposed to doctors who are and again I don't pass any judgment on doctors who just care for their own families. Of course, your charity starts at home, but their whole mindset is still about this happened to me, I want to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else.
Yes,
And
lovely.
so they themselves set up so many kind of charitable projects or work charitably themselves in the future, which is amazing.
So just going back to Rebecca for a few minutes. So just wanted to ask you, Rebecca, have you seen any of this work in action yourself?
Oh, unfortunately not. I mean, not in person. I I haven't managed to go to the field since I joined. It was, COVID and.
Oh, of course.
things, so I've not had the opportunity.
How have we forgotten the pandemic?
But I've still seen great outputs just sort of being office based. We get reports from every project that we do, and when it closes, we get the report and all of the videos and the pictures and sort of case studies from it, showing the impact, which is really rewarding to see.
Would you like to go? Where would you like
absolutely.
to go?
I want to go to all of the projects. No, it'd be amazing to visit and really see it live in action. It'd be a great opportunity.
Yeah, of course. So, Amir Sab, so I just wanted to ask you that. So, how many volunteers actually stay on site? Do you have volunteers in these different countries as well, in different camps, or they just go out when needed?
When you say volunteers, you mean people going from the UK out there, or?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, most of our projects, because we are such a education focused and education specialist organisation, what we need are, specialists and qualified people on the ground. You can't deliver an education with someone who just has a good intention. You need to have a qualified teacher. So most of our projects and our programs are actually run and led by in-country people who are qualified to do the job. So teachers who are qualified teachers, they deliver what you'd expect any teacher here in the UK to do in terms of running a classroom. They'll run their classrooms in exactly the same way there. We do have opportunities where volunteers can go out, but it's almost inevitably very, very short term. They'll go out, they'll assist in what way they can. I was speaking to we had a charity dinner at your place, actually. It was at the Heritage Centre.
Yeah, it was last Friday.
That's right, yes. So I was speaking to one of the guests at the event last Friday, and she said, I want to go out and teach. I said, are you a teacher? She goes, no. I said, then in which case I'm sure you can go out and maybe act as a teaching assistant for a short period of time, but we need qualified teachers.
Yes.
So, the other thing about actually having in-country qualified paid staff is these young ladies who are teaching, or old ladies who are teaching, or gentlemen who are teaching, they are often themselves in need, if that makes sense, in need of employment.
Yes.
So what we shouldn't do is, just parachute in, do what we can, parachute out. We should always try and build the capacity of local communities to look after themselves. So volunteers, the best place for volunteers is to help us here in the UK, help us to fundraise and get involved with us that way, as opposed to necessarily
And also, I expect that, especially if you've got people already there in the country, they can understand maybe the culture of the community and the needs of the community better. Maybe that will help.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, sure, Rebecca.
About that is, I mean, working with the teams that we work with, they're the experts. They have all the knowledge, they have all the experience of working in those locations, and they really advise us on the best way to make an effective project. There's things that we wouldn't even think about here in the UK that need to be considered on that side, and also sort of the changing situations. We need people that have the up-to-date information on how we can address problems as they arise. There's a thing, obviously in Lebanon, everything's more expensive day by day. So this is something we've been really monitoring in terms of the teachers we have at the School in a Bus project, because they obviously need to get to the site and teach, but the fuel has been getting so expensive that they're struggling to pay to get to the project in their car. So we've been monitoring this and seeing which ways we can make sure the teachers get there. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a project.
Yes,
so it's really important to have those people.
And there's
on
a
the
number
ground.
of challenges.
Absolutely.
And so, Mr. Naeem, I don't know if we shall say Mr. Naeem or Mr. Amir.
You can call me Amir, or you can call me Oi. You can call me whatever you like.
So, can you just explain to the listeners what UK Aid Match means?
Yeah, sure. So, UK Aid Match is a government fund run by what used to be called DFID, the Department for International Development, but now it's called the FCD, or the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, or something along that line. The idea being that the government want the UK public to have somewhat of a say in how their charitable donations are going to be spent. Remember, I mean, even though it's the FCDO grant and it's from the government, these are still our tax pounds that are or that they're spending. And so what they're saying is, look, okay, well, let's try and get the public to also be involved in deciding where this goes. So the best way for them to do that is say, well, actually, look, if you as a member of the public are willing to donate £1 to this cause, then obviously this is a cause which is dear to you, in which case we will match that. So if you donate £1, we'll give £1. And so the UK Aid Match programme is pound for pound, whatever anyone actually donates to.
So there's no upper ceiling.
Power Her campaign.
There's no upper ceiling.
Well, no. I mean, so the fund so I suppose the grant that we are trying to raise a minimum of is £360,000, which will then be matched. So if we raise 360, it gets matched by 360. But the truth is, if we raised £1 million, the UK government will match it by £1 million. So there's no ceiling.
Inshallah.
There's obviously a minimum we want. Yeah, inshallah. There's no ceiling. And so what we've actually got is we've got plans in place. So this particular project, I'm sure Rebecca's perhaps already mentioned, there's 6 projects in Gilgit, particularly, and it's very apt that today is International Women's Day.
Yes.
This particularly for girls. And in this particular area of Pakistan, I mean, the number of girls in school is I think it's 0.02% of the girls in the area. It's phenomenally, it's ridiculous how low the numbers are in terms of the number of kids in school. I think even the number of schools available for them, I think there's like 13 girls' schools in the whole of the province compared to 150 odd for boys. So
huge
this particular
disparity.
grant, it's crazy the level of the disparity.
So I was asking.
What we've got planned is what we've got planned is even though we're going to be working in Gilgit with this kind of budget of around kind of 700,000 should we manage to hit that target. If we manage to double it, we're going to do the same project in a different area of Pakistan, probably Sarpakar, which is where the conversations have kind of started. And I don't know if your listeners know much about Sarpakar. It's an exceptionally poverty-stricken desert area in Sindh in Pakistan.
Okay.
And so we just expand it. So the more the better, inshallah.
And why are you focusing particularly in Pakistan?
Well, this project, so the FCDO has particular project or area focuses and project focuses. So girls' education is a really, really important one. girls' education in a place where girls' education is lacking, and these areas of Pakistan that we're particularly doing this work absolutely tick that box. We have a significant expertise in Pakistan. I mean, so our birthplace was Kashmir and Pakistan anyway, and so we were able to show, significant competency, capacity in the area. The fact that we've kind of done programs like this particular one in the past as well, where you can, girls who have just genuinely not had access to education, a process of actually getting them through these kind of community-based learning centres for 3 years, which kind of brings them to a level where they can then actually access the mainstream provision that's actually there as well. So because of all those things, we were given the grant for this particular project in Pakistan.
And do you know of any sort of success stories? I mean, I think you did mention that some of these children, once they've sort of graduated through the program, they help the community as well. But is there any that really stand out, or do you know any real success?
Well, I'm sure Rebecca could probably allude to a lot more because she's read a lot more. But I do know I've heard of so many cases. Obviously, these become conversations around the office. But so many cases of, young students have gone through the Reed schools and they've become top in the whole of the region as far as their educational attainment. Now you have to remember there are private schools and a host of other schools in the area, yet these children are coming through the Reed Foundation schools are achieving, gold medals in terms of their regional kind of attainment. And then they like I said, go on and they become managers and doctors and teachers and engineers. And I think, you can only give them the opportunity to aspire and achieve. And these children will just, they'll lap it up and they'll make good of it, inshallah. Alhamdulillah.
Exactly. I think that's what the key is. They really want to learn. A lot of children, I mean, think about this country, they go to school to play mostly. Unfortunately, of course, I'm not saying everyone, but yes. I wanted to ask you that does the charity decide where the donations go, or is it the particular campaign the charity wants to highlight at the moment? Can donors decide? Because I know you've got a number of different projects like School in the Bus and Empower Her. So how does that work?
Yes, so I mean, we've got a range of different education-focused. I mean, so that's the key, is that all our projects are based around education. So in terms of the UK aid match, that's specifically for this girls-focused education program in Pakistan. And it's got that kind of that window within which you have to donate. So you have to kind of donate before the 4th of May in order for it to be matched. So that's the UK aid match. But yes, we have kind of girls programs. We've got the School in the Bus in Lebanon. Now the School in the Bus in Lebanon, that's a really interesting one because that actually caters for Syrian refugees.
I see.
And there's this whole concept of what they call educide, which is, when you have conflict like we've seen in Syria, we're seeing in Yemen, and now also we're also seeing in Ukraine, what actually happens is a whole generation of children, they don't get their education. They have to leave the country and they spend a decade and a half, 2 decades in refugee camps where there's no educational provision. And the term they use to describe this is educide. Is that, you've just kind of, ruined the future for this whole community, this whole home loses access to education. So something like the School in the Bus, it is what it says on the tin. It's a school which is mobile in a bus, which means it can then access these refugee communities, and it can just make sure that the children that are able to access it kind of get some degree of continuity of their education. But not just that. I mean, yes, there's continuity of education, which, is a basic human right. But also just the fact that, the children are actually going to school. The fact that they're actually, in a child-friendly environment. Given the trauma that they've actually been through, it helps in terms of their mental well-being too. I mean, I was listening literally this morning to Radio 4, and someone actually gave an example of, if you had a cat and you put a cat in the garden and you just dropped kind of explosions around the cat constantly. Once the explosions stop, yes, the cat's still there, but it's not the same animal anymore. It's traumatized. And you have to just imagine that's exactly what's happening to all these poor children who are actually going through this, seeing this, displaced. They're traumatized beyond belief. And at the very basic level, the School in the Bus project also provides, some, a healthy meal for them when they're there. But so much more than that. Companionship, normality from this abnormal stuff. But we've got, orphan sponsorship programs. We've got a program helping street children in Bangladesh, again providing them safe spaces, stopping them getting abused and trafficked and that type of stuff. And we've got a whole host of programs which are aimed at opening schools or building schools and similar too. They're all available on the website, reedfoundation.org.uk.
I was just going to ask about that. I was going to ask Rebecca actually, but you answered.
It's already there.
So everything's on the website, Reed Foundation. That's brilliant. And if somebody wants to volunteer or fundraise, they have to go to the website as well? Is that correct?
I think you can express your interest on the website, or you can also email our info email, just info@reedfoundation.org.uk.
Okay.
And we also have our regional fundraisers, depending on where you're based. We can get you in touch with one of them and they can direct you to any opportunities for volunteering in the UK.
Yes, I think you've got an office here in Manchester, haven't you?
Yeah, just 10 minutes from here. We're really local.
So any events planned this year? I know you've had a big one last week. And is there any more coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming up to our busiest time, obviously.
Yeah, of course, Ramadan.
So we've got a few more dinners coming up, some tours, and I think also some treks. There's a trek going on at Dovedale. There was one a little while ago at Edale. It's just a really nice event. People go out for the day. They might have a fundraising, page online, and their friends can donate to that. So yeah, there's a lot to go on. There's also some information on our website about that, I think.
That's brilliant. And of course, it's a really worthwhile charity to donate, to volunteer or fundraise for. And do you want to mention anything else?
What would be worth mentioning is that that trek and that iftar dinner that Rebecca just talked about.
Yes.
So there's an iftar dinner on the 23rd of April. It will be at Nawab's, and everybody loves Nawab's. Of course, not as good as the Marquee, but other than that, everybody loves Nawab's. Yeah. And the trek, the one in Dovedale, the fundraising for that will happen through Ramadan. Again, just kind of ring the office. They've got such a gorgeous telephone number, 03000 121 121. You can remember that, I'm sure. But both of those projects, the funds are going towards this match funding campaign again. So actually, everything anyone raises gets matched.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, it really is. And in Ramadan too, there's the multiplication that happens in Ramadan in terms of all your good deeds are multiplied. That's true. Yes. So it's multiplied anyway, and then combine that with the fact that you get it match funded. It's like it's going to be a proper grand, Black Friday sale.
Amazing. So, where do you see the future of Reed Foundation?
Oh, big question.
That's a big question. Do you think they will continue to help? Like, obviously, they're going to help the deprived children. And what about this country? Is there any projects for this country in particular?
This year we actually kind of started working on what we can do in this country. There's a few sort of things that we're trialling. I don't know too much about it, but kind of looking at deprived areas or deprived communities in the UK, and sort of looking at local charities and see how we can collaborate with them in the best way. So that's just something that's ongoing in the background, and I think it's something we're really going to grow in the next year or two.
One thing I really like, there's a lot of really interesting work that you're doing, but one thing is that the Right for Reed project, I would say, and I think, or initiative rather, and I think that is so nice to encourage young children to write as well. So because writing and reading go together, so in that way you are helping children even in developed countries, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think Write for Readers is just a really nice campaign to kind of get people involved, especially children. I think obviously usually when we're like fundraising or doing any kind of charity outreach, it's usually towards adults because that's where the money is. But it's really nice to get involved with the children as well, and sort of they can see the impact that this charity is having on people just like them around the world. So yeah, it's a really nice initiative.
Fantastic. So just remind the listeners about the website.
Yeah, website is readfoundation.org.uk.
And the email?
info@readfoundation.org.uk.
And the phone, let me see if I remember this. 03000 121 121, is that correct?
That's it.
Now, if I can remember it, I'm sure everyone else can remember it too.
I hope so.
Thank you so much for coming in today, and thank you, Mr. Naeem, on the phone as well. And I hope, inshallah, that your projects are a great success. What you're doing is amazing, and all the volunteers involved, volunteers and fundraisers involved as well. So I just wish you the best, inshallah. And any concluding words? Anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you so much. It's really a great opportunity to speak about this project and hopefully raise some awareness about what we're doing and what's going on around the world. And also happy International Women's Day.
Oh, yes. Definitely. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm sure you would agree that very inspiring a conversation between the two guests, Rebecca Lord and Amin Naeem from Reed Foundation. And if you want to find out more about the charity, if you want to give a donation or fundraise or volunteer, then please check the website for Reed Foundation, or you can email or call, whatever is convenient for you. In the run-up to Ramadan, inshallah, I suppose this is the busiest time for all charities, and it's an opportunity for all of us to get the ajr, to get the good deeds by supporting charities and trying to alleviate the problems and issues that so many people are facing around the world, and particularly children. And it's quite sad when you think about it, like especially for war-torn countries, either families living in conflict or being displaced in refugee camps. And what Brother Naeem was saying, it's a word that I've never actually heard before, the term educide, that these conflicts, they deprive a whole generation of education. And subhanallah, the efforts that must go into bringing them back, and also to help comfort them through the trauma that they have been through. It's really a very important job, and it's inspiring what these charities can do. And whatever you can do, then please get in touch. And if you have any comments or feedback about charities, and this charity or any charities in particular, or the importance of education, I would love to hear from you. And as you know, the studio number is 0161 883 2255. And we are just coming up to 3 o'clock, and it's time for the news and the weather. And Asr Salah will be at 3:17. After the news, I will be speaking about International Women's Day, and I would love your input. So if you would like to maybe nominate a woman a friend or someone who has been inspiring to you, who's helped you, or who's been your role model, I'd love to hear from you. Or, of course, you can send in a text. So I'll see you the other side of the news, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. That was the news and the weather, and it was followed by some promos of some of the really interesting programs here on Heritage Radio. Did you know that we have such a variety of different programs? We've got the wellness show, we've got ultimate fitness, we've got programs in Urdu, in English, in Arabic. So, stay tuned and find out. It's very interesting and there's a lot. And we will be having some special broadcasts during Ramadan as well. So we will let you know soon, inshallah. So today is the 8th of March, 2022. And around the world, they are celebrating International Women's Day. So what exactly is International Women's Day? It is collective action and shared ownership for driving gender parity, and that's what makes International Women's Day impactful. So, it's a time to become more aware of issues around the world that are affecting women in particular. And it's not only in underdeveloped countries but developed countries as well, where women could be doing the same job as a man but earning much less. And there is a world-renowned feminist and journalist called Gloria Steinem. She once explained that the story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist, nor to any one organization, but to the collective efforts of all who care about human rights. So, what does International Women's Day mean to you? Have you thought about it at all? And not only it is a time to raise awareness of the issues, like I mentioned, around the world, but also it is a time to celebrate the global social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. And it's very interesting that I've been present here at Heritage Radio for almost 1 year now. And in that time, I've had the privilege of having conversations with women in Manchester from across the board. So many different backgrounds and really, really interesting stories. At the top of my head, what I can remember is, like, of course, we've had like a personal trainer. I've had a social activist, a writer, a teacher, a counselor, and mashallah, just the variety, and just in one city, just in not even a city, but just in part of a city, as in Manchester. We see that, mashallah, women are making a difference. And it's not, it's not so much as what the feminists would say, stand up for yourself, but it's for the community. They're doing things for the community. Great initiatives like charities and work to help the underprivileged, from women, young ladies who've started their own businesses, either selling abayas, cakes, decorating their own cakes. There is so much. And of course, when we see this, we think, maybe we should think about women and girls around the world, and what would they give to have opportunities that we have. And at the same time, are we making the most of the opportunities we have? I think each and every one of us could do so much more, myself included. And I think the whole thing is about organizing your time and your tasks and prioritizing tasks. And maybe you can squeeze in a little time for others or for the community to make a difference. Even if it's at a food sale and you cook one item, or even not cooking, even if you just go, even if you spend £1, you are doing something, you're supporting somebody else. Find out the needs for your community, for your neighbors. So this reminds me that on Sunday I went to Longside, and because somebody told me there's this group called Be Longside, which I think is just an ingenious name. And what they had done was there's a little patch of green, some grass, couple of benches and things, and it's actually on a very busy road, sort of the middle aisle kind of thing. And it's opposite, it's very near the bridge. And usually what I've seen that before is just covered with like bird droppings and really like a messy place. So they decided to make a difference, and they've actually called that, I would call it a patch of grass really, but it's a very small area. They called it Pigeon Park, and they said, why don't we as a community do something about this? And I went there in order to help, but honestly there were so many children there. They'd actually taken over, and you could hear them so excited and everything, planting little plants, little flowers, enjoying digging, maybe getting soil on their hands. And it's such a great initiative. Not only you are looking after your environment, you're getting your whole community involved, and also you're teaching the young people, the children, the young people, the benefits of the environment, of the community. And I think that was pretty amazing. And I love to go back there maybe in a few weeks, and hopefully, inshallah, the flowers would be coming up. And I would say I spoke to the sister in charge, and mashallah, again, we see there is a sister, and she has taken the initiative. She has decided, okay, we're going to do something about this. And again, there is so much that can be done. Just a week ago, I was at a fundraising dinner, and that was for another charity. And at my table, there were a few sisters. They actually worked in the charity shop, and they were explaining their work there. And of course they were very dedicated to their job, and how they take like even secondhand clothes or household items and everything, how they sort it out, how they clean them, and arrange them for sale, and then they're selling to the public. And then those who are not, those items, especially clothing that's not sold, that's recycled. And I was thinking, subhanallah, such an involved job. And it, of course, you need that dedication to be able to do something like this. And again, there's so much happening in our communities. And I want to ask you today, what are you doing to help your community? What cause are you supporting? They say charity starts at home. So yes, do help those poor people around the world, children who are underprivileged, or like I mentioned before, maybe traumatized through conflict, through poverty, through being displaced. But at the same time, maybe a fraction of the time can be spent here in your own communities. And, look out for events happening in your community and support them. The least you can do is support them. I am sure they would really appreciate your help in whatever way that you can. So what else have I been doing? So last Friday, I attended a workshop here at the Heritage Centre, and that was tackling hate crime. And it was very well attended. MashaAllah, we had a number of sisters, because this one in particular, this was just for women. And inshallah, something very positive is going to come out of these series of workshops, and something for the whole community, and maybe in future programs we will discuss some of the issues and how everyone can get involved, how everyone can support. So what's happening now? It is 3:15. In a couple of minutes it will be time for Asr Adhan, and please observe the Adhan at your timings wherever you may be. And we are talking about International Women's Day. So who is your role model? Who is the person who is you think inspiring in your community? So it could be someone influential, it could be maybe someone in the public domain, or it could be someone very local who is doing a good job. So I'd love to hear from you, and also what does International Women's Day mean to you? What does International Women's Day mean to you? What do you think? And I'm just getting a call from my auntie in Canada, which I had to decline. SubhanAllah. I have to have my phone out to see the time. Otherwise, how will I know what time to do everything? And it is time for Adhan now. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. I find it really interesting that our guests before, they were speaking about a lot of underdeveloped countries, and in particular Pakistan, where there is a huge number of children, especially girls, who are not in full-time education. And the reason some people have given, of course, there's many different reasons. Poverty, of course, is a main factor. But another reason is culture as well. And then I was thinking, but why is that? It's surprising, because in Islam, there has been a great tradition of Muslim women scholars, even from the time of the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. And there are a few that I would like to mention now. And, amazing women in their own right. And they taught scholars of later generations. And the first one is Nafisa bint al-Hassan. And as you know, that Al-Hassan was the grandson of the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. So Nafisa was the great-granddaughter of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she was born in Mecca, and she spent her later life in Cairo, where a mosque now bears her name. She was raised with an extensive Islamic education and learned from great scholars, memorizing the Quran and learning a hadith and Islamic jurisprudence at a young age. And that's so incredible in itself, that her guardians, her parents, really wanted her to study the religion and study it at great depth. One of the du'as of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is that, Allah give us beneficial knowledge. And you have to think that, you're learning, which is a good thing, but exactly what you're learning and what knowledge will actually benefit us. So, going back to Nafisa bint al-Hassan. So she was renowned for her excessive devotion to worship, having reportedly fasted during the day, prayed all night, and performed Hajj around 30 times in her life. Subhanallah, subhanallah. Can you imagine that? I've still to do Hajj, inshallah, one day, inshallah. She taught two of the most prominent scholars of all time, Abu Abdullah Muhammad Idris al-Shafi and Ahmed ibn Hanbal, whose teachings led to the Shafi school of jurisprudence and the Hanbali school of jurisprudence, respectively. Can you imagine that? Those two great scholars, two great imams of the four madhabs, they actually they were students under this great lady Nafisa, mashallah. The second one is al-Darda al-Sughra, and this was in the 7th century. It's very, very interesting. So she refused to conform to gender norms ever since she was a child, as she often prayed in the men's rows and sat among males learning the Quran. Well, I don't know if I would sort of agree to that, but this was when she was a child. As a grown-up, she continued, to pray in the masjid, and she went on to issue fatwas as well. She grew up to become a jurist, Islamic scholar, and a teacher of hadith and fiqh, and eventually began lecturing both men and women in the Damascus Mosque. And according to the Saudi Gazette, al-Darda became a reliable authority for a hadith and taught several prominent Islamic figures and scholars, including the Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik bin Marwan, as well as the celebrated scholar, theologian and judge Hassan al-Basri, mashallah. She viewed the exchange of knowledge as a form of worship, and she said, "I have sought worship in everything. I did not find anything more relieving to me than sitting with scholars and exchanging with them." So can you imagine these great scholars that we all know about? Hassan al-Basri is so well known, but did you know that he was a student under a female teacher? It's really interesting. They had no problem at that time in the 7th century. And why is it now that people sometimes they put up obstacles when girls want to teach or they won't even study? Then there's the third one is Shuda al-Baghdadiyya in the 10th century. She was known as Fakhr an-Nisa, pride of womankind, and the writer of Baghdad. Al-Baghdadiyya was born in Iran and died in Iraq. Having studied under the guidance of her father, the famous traditionist Abu Nasr al-Dinavari, as well as several reputed scholars, she was known for accurately transmitting and explaining a hadith. So if you don't know already, a hadith, of course, the traditions of our noble Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his speech and his traditions, and there is a huge science behind it. The chain of the narrators and how authentic the a particular hadith may be. And scholars have gone to great lengths to designate a hadith based on how authentic it is, because of course for us that's very important, that we have to follow authentic hadith. And she gave lectures at universities and mosques in Baghdad, and her teachings of the hadith were held in high regard. Apart from her extensive knowledge on the Prophet ﷺ sayings, she was known for her impeccable skills in calligraphy. Her style of writing gained much popularity and was taken up generation after generation. And the Dean of Cambridge Islamic College, Muhammad Akram Nadvi, writes, in her time there was no one in Baghdad who had handwriting like hers. Oh, isn't that beautiful? It's just so nice to even think about it, that her writing was not only acknowledged but appreciated and celebrated. So, you just going through this list, I mean, doesn't this inspire you? Because these were Muslim women. On one hand, they were good Muslims, they were steadfast on their deen, but at the same time, they were helping their community. They were conveying their teaching. They were conveying whatever they had learnt. So next one is Fatima al-Samarkandi from the 12th century. She was taught by her father, a distinguished jurist, Muhammad al-Samarkandi, and she grew up to become a respected scholar and jurist who issued her own fatwas. She mastered Hanafi jurisprudence and the sciences of hadith, with her legal judgments and transmissions of her hadith considered greatly reliable. She taught Islamic sciences to both male and female students, with students traveling all the way to Syria just to learn from her. She notably served as a personal counselor for Nur al-Din Zangi, one of the most famous rulers in Islamic history. So you can imagine Islamic ruler in the 12th century. He, as a personal counselor, he had a woman, mashallah, who he trusted her opinions and her knowledge. Despite being pursued by kings and princes, she went on to marry one of her father's students, a top Ala al-Ghassani, who was a top Hanafi jurist. Interestingly, al-Samarkandi played a major role in al-Ghassani's work, having corrected and edited his legal opinions. His esteem for her was so great that he would not sign the legal opinions he issued until Fatima signed them first. Oh, that's so beautiful. Supporting each other. That's true love, I would say. Then, going sort of into more recent times, another scholar was Fatima al-Fudayliyah in the 18th century. She was known as al-Sheikha al-Fudayliyah. She mastered it in the art of calligraphy and excelled in different Islamic sciences with a special interest in hadith. Having studied from reputed scholars, she became a reliable source on hadith, with students attending her lectures and receiving certificates from her. Among her prominent students were Sheikh Umar al-Hanafi and Sheikh Muhammad Saleh. Towards the end of her life, al-Fudayliyah settled in Mecca, where she founded a public library. And again, that's such a beautiful thing that, she's giving her community the gift of education, the gift of knowledge. So, mashallah, there's a lot of, and this is just a very few of them. There's many scholars, many Muslim women scholars, and even to this day. And I hope, inshallah, that one day I will have somebody on the radio as well as a guest. And let's just take a nasheed break now. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. And that was Mahir Zain. MashaAllah, I really like his nasheeds as well as a lot of other artists. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the show. And my thanks to my guests, Rebecca Lord and Ahmed Naeem. And inshallah, I will be back next Tuesday with, inshallah, another program inspired to instill positivity and hope, something that we need every day and throughout our lives. And please be the person who will inspire positivity and hope to your own family and friends and your community. And I will be here next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.